welcome to the Lighten Up podcast with Lauren Polly, your invitation for living on the lighter side of life. I'm Lauren Polly, and I am delighted you have chosen to join me today for episode 195, Things Change, and It's Okay to Let Them. I want to talk today about the ever changing landscape of our lives, our relationships, our environment, just about everything you can think of, and what that brings up for a lot of us. Sometimes it brings up this kind of holding on tighter than you could possibly imagine because, oh my goodness, I don't want things to change. Sometimes it can bring up a great deal of sadness, of wistfulness and longing. And then, of course, it leads into control, where we try to keep things the way that they are, especially if we're delighted by the way that they're showing up in that moment. This conversation is born from a couple of different things. I was teaching a workshop maybe a year and a half ago, and a lovely woman, she's a mother with 4 kids, has a very happy life. She does a lot of entrepreneurial stuff too, but mainly her life revolves around her family. She's chosen to set it up that way. She has such an admiration and a love for her family that she brought up in class. She sits sometimes and she watches her children and her husband interact and play, and it brings up such a sense of gratitude and joy of like, wow, look at how amazing this is. And immediately it is followed by a, oh, I don't want this to change. There was a kind of fear factor of something may happen and I may lose it. Something may happen that would change the amazing dynamics we have now. And sometimes it was just this kind of wistfulness she brought up of like, things couldn't possibly get any better than this. And oh my goodness, if I could freeze time right now and just live in this moment, that's what I would choose to do. Now, you may have had those kind of occurrences for yourself too, where you just took this picture in the moment of like, this is everything that I could possibly desire right here, right now. And to have that sense of, oh no, what is the next moment going to hold? It gets a little bit confronting for all of us. It's also super confusing because at one hand, it's joyful and you're very grateful and you have so much admiration and love. And on the other hand, there's this controlling, sorrowful, fearful thing that can pop up. Another example of this is something I've been experiencing quite dynamically lately. I've been hiking every weekend and I've been going to the same trail for the last 8 weeks or so, ever since the wet season ended here in California. And I love lushness. I love the green grass, and we don't get to have that for a while in California. Usually it turns brown after the sun comes out and we start getting into the warmth of the new season. And so every week I've been visiting the same trail, watching the flowers come and the greens change from that fresh spring green to kind of a more dull shade. And it's been the same sort of thing that this woman was talking about of like, oh my God, I have to soak it in so much right now because I know it's not going to last forever. And it's a fascinating phenomenon, whether you're looking at a personal thing like this woman in my workshop with her family and her love of her kids and her husband snapshotted in time, or if you're like me, where you are just admiring the beauty of the earth and like, oh my God, but what if I know this isn't going to last forever. So again, grateful and joyful to have that experience, but also like, but it's going to go away. That's just life. Life is ever changing. Life is ever changing. Life is ever evolving. The planet is ever changing. Our relationships are ever changing. The children grow up. The parents age. The dynamics shift. Your businesses continue to grow and go through ups and downs. This is just kind of the rule of life. And for me, I love looking at it in terms of a cycle. If you look at the season cycle, like I had said, with the bright green, fresh spring, which I know is going to turn into kind of brown summer pretty soon, for me to be able to actually have the enjoyment in that moment of such a gorgeous day and not have the clinging to, the control of, oh my goodness, it's going to leave. Also, you can take that lesson of like the seasons changing into your personal dynamics. I mean, there are seasons to our lives. There are seasons to our relationships. I really truly believe there's a season for everything. And some things, some people, some creations, some relationships don't actually last the whole time. They come and they go and we move on. And it's a very interesting thing that us people do where we want to find something that we've been aiming for or something that really works for us. And then once we achieve it, once we have it, we want to hold on like the devil to it so that it doesn't go away. And again, those mishmash of emotions come up, but more than anything, there's this control thing that comes, the clamping down, where you start living with tension. You start living with stunting other people's growth around you. You become kind of that branch that doesn't bend in the breeze anymore, and therefore, when things do change, you have a really hard time reconciling with it and being able to bounce back and reinvent what's coming next. And I think that's the bigger lesson. And that's what we dove into in the workshop with this mother I was talking about. And also with myself, I had this conversation with my interestingness with the seasons changing. It's really the beauty of being present in that moment, really truly allowing yourself to soak in whatever it is that you've created, because obviously you've created something amazingly beautiful to have that kind of reaction, that snapshot in time, and to ask the question, well, how does it get better than this? That's a very simple question. It comes from the tools of access consciousness. It basically allows the door to open for greater possibilities. Now, just to keep this in your knowledge bucket, a lot of people ask, how does it get better than this? Not really wanting it to change, wanting to kind of maintain what is or get some sort of better version of it. So having an amazing family night with your kids and your husband and everything's working beautifully and you ask that question, how does it get better? Sometimes you don't want to flip to the big change where something out of the ordinary occurs. Sometimes you're asking that question, but really and truly you're only going for a micro baby step of change, and that's okay. It's fascinating to me again to really look at how dynamically our lives and our relationships and the people in them desire to grow and change. And when you're asking any question kind of with the point of view that you're only really wanting things to change and shift just a little bit, just enough so that I'm still happy with my perfect picture, you're not really open to what can be. You're not open to the surprises that may actually be even greater than you can imagine. And unfortunately, to maintain that question, but only changing a little tiny bit, it brings up the control factor. It brings up holding the bird way too tight that you crush its wings, or that you hold it gently, but you don't give it enough space to actually fly away, transform, and come back if it chooses to. This is a hard lesson. I mean, I think a lot of us, depending on what your background is, we've studied different philosophies and different spiritual messages and also different practical tools that actually go, look, things do change. There is non-permanence to life. And it's not about finding the one thing that's really going to light you up and holding on to it, reaching the finish line and maintaining it. It's actually enjoying the journey. It's enjoying every moment along that path that will wind, that will have ups and downs, that will have those snapshot moments of perfections where you're like, oh my God, how did I get so lucky? And how can I hold on to this? Absolutely. But being able to relax into that and go, you know what? This is a moment. I'm so grateful for having it. How does it get better than this? And I'm down for the ride. I'm up for the ride ahead. That's a very different energy to be living by, having a beautiful spring day where everything is lush and gorgeous and being like, oh my gosh, I know the brown grass is coming. Yikes. But to be able to actually dive into the beauty and the joy of that. And again, perhaps there's beauty and joy in the dry brown months of the summer. And you know what? Another spring is going to be coming a year from now. It's so fascinating. It almost brings up that, I don't know if it's a parable. I've heard it before where it's like life has meaning only because there's death at the end of it. And it's like the sun has beauty only because there's the rain to contrast it. And when you're very attuned and very much looking at receiving from everything, you actually start to find beauty in the rain. You find beauty in the seasons that actually don't have the bright sparkle thing that maybe you were going from the onset. To be a little heavier for a second, there is beauty in death. I work in a hospital. I see the end of life process many, many, many times over. And there is beautiful deliciousness in that transition. And again, in the seasons that we choose to live. If you are living your life where you feel like you're controlling, if you feel like you have extra tension in your body and your mind, if you feel like most of the steps that you take day in and day out are trying to maintain what is or recreate what was, and also if most of your action steps seem to be leading you towards that one perfect moment or that one perfect thing that you'll create and then know you've made it. Like this invented finish line that we all go off of. If you're living your life that way, you're really living for the perfection of one way of living. You're not really open for the seasonal changes. The fact that the universe changes, the earth changes, our relationships change, our dynamics with ourselves change, our businesses, our creations change. And being able to actually relax into that, ride that wave and actually ask the question, how does it get better than this without a point of view of I only want this much to change and that's going to equal my version of better. To truly be in the wonderment of, okay, hey, what's next? Where do I go from here? Where does my family go from here? Where does this business desire to go from here? And to enjoy the journey along the way. It's not about where you end up, and it's not about reaching a pinnacle of success and holding on to it. That's where a lot of people end up in a very stressful, contracted space. It's so funny. Most of us are afraid of the failures, thinking that that's the thing that's really going to pull us off path. Sometimes, more sneakily and more subtly, it's the moments of success that actually do that. Because again, we get that snapshot in time of everything is so amazing right now, I don't want it to change. I have to hold on to it. I have to keep recreating it. I have to maintain it. And when you have that, because there's this positive judgment attached to it, there really isn't the bandwidth to relax, to let go, and to actually allow things to start to continually evolve and unravel and unfold and unfurl from there. It's a very different way to be living, but if there's been a lot of mind tension, a lot of body tension, a lot of action steps of trying to maintain things, a lot of your mind being on recreating the past, only maintaining the present, or trying to get to one pinnacle of success that you think is going to make you happy, you may want to look at this. You may want to relax into the seasons of life, the seasons of changing, knowing that it does change, that it's okay to relax and let go into it, and to again ask those questions. How does it get better than this? Really and truly from that wondering space of I'm totally open for it too. Whatever that looks like, whatever new form is coming my way. There's a beautiful submission energy to that, where you're actually taking your own individual ego-like points of view definitions out of the equation, allowing yourself to relax into the bigger picture and perhaps a greater plan that your cognitive mind can't actually plan out for you. Be grateful for those moments. That's what I told the mother in that class who was just like, my family's so amazing. I'm just so afraid of it changing. Be super grateful that you've created that. I am no more grateful than I walk outside to a beautiful day and actually have that lushness around me. I indulge it. I love it. I am so grateful for it. I allow myself to embrace it fully, and then I release it and I let go. And I ask the question, how does it get better than this? And I wonder what's next and what enjoyment I can find in the next moment of life. Things will grow, things will change. What if you could actually allow them to? And what could you create in your relationships if you were willing to be that space for the other people in your life? It may create a totally different enjoyment, presence, and dynamic. Have an amazing week, and as always, I will chat with you next Tuesday.